Welcome to the Holboy Entertainment Industry Podcast. This is episode 0, and I'm here with Jay Oakes. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we're here today, and we're just going to be talking a little bit about video production, photography, a little bit of web design maybe, and then going to touch up on a little bit of business ideas and thoughts. So let's start off with jump into photography. So what do you do in photography? What camera do you use? And what are your thoughts on people who want to get into photography? What camera should they maybe look into? Stuff like that.
Ooh. Well, right now I'm using my Sony A68. That's what I use for both photo and video work. But using my Sony A68 and have a variety of lenses that I use. One of my goals through photography is being able to take a photo directly from camera and not having to edit a photo.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one of the arts that I'm always working on, and and getting better at it every once in a while, getting that photo that looks worse edited than is straight out of camera.
It's always the worst when you get a picture like that.
It's a challenge, like trying to get to that spot where you're able to work with the lighting perfectly and really really accomplish the task without having to do any post-production work on the photo.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm probably more partial towards landscape photography at the moment. And really enjoying getting into and dabbling with night photography, learning what that looks like, but still learning and still growing in that. I was reading an article the other day about somebody who does night photography, and he said his first time out he took 700 pictures and one of them was usable.
Oh man.
And it's which I can totally relate with. I totally get that. Because it takes a lot of shots to get a good one. Yeah,
no kidding. So, what's your go-to lens? Like, do you have a kit lens, or have you? I mean, it seems like you've got probably a little bit of a collection of Sony glass. So, what's your go-to lens, and what's maybe your all-around lens that you like to use?
You know, my go-to is a Sony 35 millimeter.
Oh, the 35 is my favorite focal length ever.
It is fantastic.
Perfect.
It's great unless you're inside of a building, because a lot of times you just can't get back far enough.
Yep.
But for my go-to, it's my 35. It'll drop down to a 1.8, and I think it was a $220 lens. It was pretty great for as an option, and the glass is clear, it focuses well, the manual focus is pretty quiet. It's one of the SAM models, so it's got a fairly silent autofocus, and it does pretty well. My all-around lens is my Tamron 17 to 55.
I think the 17 or 18 to 55, that lens, like I have it for my old Nikon. It's just such an amazing lens, and so mine can only open up to like f3.5 or f, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But I don't know how it works out that I'm still able to get an image from those lenses that I can throw the background still pretty well, and I was surprised to find that when I brought in some pictures after a shoot, only with my 18 to 55, and all these pictures are just some nice creamy backgrounds and just good isolation of my subject, which a lot of times with those zoom lenses like that with a pretty high f-stop where you can't open up the aperture that big, you can't get that type of a picture. But I'm impressed with the 18 to 55s that you're able to usually get a pretty decent looking image still. And I enjoy that about those lenses a lot.
Yeah, that Tamron glass seems to work pretty well. Seems to be clear, and it's one of the DI Mark II models, and works pretty well. The PZD, I really enjoy it. It's a pretty great lens. The autofocus is quick on that lens, and one nice thing about it being a zoom lens, it does have a lock on the zoom, and so once you put it in your camera bag, it's not going to open up on you.
Yeah.
So
that's always nice.
Yeah.
So, for people that are getting into photography, and I mean, for when you first got into photography, what were the kind of the struggles that you had with finding the right camera? And for people who are maybe looking to get into photography, what would you recommend that they focus on for a photography camera?
Ooh, I would focus on getting something inexpensive. Getting something. It's not a matter of the camera. It's a matter of the photographer behind the camera. And I've seen so many people spend a great deal of money on a camera because this great photographer uses this camera, and they're going to get the same pictures because they have the same camera. And a good photographer can get great pictures with a lousy camera to a certain extent, and lenses, glass, the features of the camera come into that a little bit. But ultimately, it's really down to the photographer.
Yeah.
So I started with a Canon T2i, and I spent $225 on eBay.
Yeah.
Bought a camera. I bought a 24mm pancake prime lens from Canon for it. So I think I had $450 in the camera.
Yeah.
And played around with it. I learned what manual actually was on a camera. And there's a lot of hacks and unlocks for the T2i, and it was good to be able to learn instead of spending $1,500 on a camera or whatever, but being able to learn those different experiences and finding out what I was actually looking for in a camera.
Yeah.
And then I think once you start getting into that, once you start getting towards where the camera's holding you back, then you know a little bit more what you're looking for. I want something with a quieter or more quicker autofocus.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different dynamics in that, but for early beginning starting photographer, I would say don't spend too much money. Know that you are probably the biggest hindrance in the gap between the good photo and the bad photo, and so learning, not to be discouraging, but more learning that, and just saying, all right, I'm gonna practice instead of just spending more money on the camera, because you're just gonna end up super disappointed.
Yeah.
You can spend $2,500 and still not understand how the camera works.
Definitely. Yeah, I think my first photography camera, I didn't own it. I was through the high school, and the one that I first started using was the Canon T3i.
Okay.
And that was kind of like my nice entrance. And plus those T2, 3, 4, and I think even the 5i, all those are super affordable right now, and they're really simple to use. The menus are simple, because like the Sony A7S and A7S II, I've used both of those on commercials, and the menu systems in those are just so huge that it's really easy to get lost in. And even, I've been doing photography and videography for quite a few years now, and I still often, even with my camera that I own, I will get lost in those menus just because. And that's the thing that I think you get with more expensive cameras, is you have more options. And definitely when you're starting out, I don't think that you need all those options, because then you start focusing on, maybe, whatever this thing that I can adjust on my camera, if I can adjust it to whatever this is, I can get a better picture. And I think it just starts slowing you down, and then you start wasting time, and I think it's not efficient, and it's not worth it. It's not needed. Yeah. And I've found that a lot with cameras. It's just speed. It's if you get bogged down with what you can potentially do, you might not be able to actually find the potential of what you can do. Yeah.
Well, and I think actually that brings in a good point, is you've got all those menus, you've got all of those options, and I think a good thing to focus on if you're beginning in that world of photography, even if you're just trying to step up your game, is one mistake that I can make is adjusting more than one thing at a time. And so I don't know what actually got me where I wanted to get, because you start getting into certain adjustments, you start getting into things, and if too many things are adjusted, you don't know what got you that crisp clarity.
Yeah.
And so be careful in what you're setting to auto. In the beginning, I was setting ISO to auto because I didn't totally understand where the best place was for it. And your camera's pretty good at that. Your camera's pretty smart. And so, so it was good. It helped me to learn what my aperture and my shutter speed were. And then I had to learn to set my ISO, and then I'd adjust my shutter speed, and then I'd do that, and then I would set those things to more of a fixed, and then I'd allow the aperture to adjust if it needed to, and so practicing and experimenting with those things. The best thing that you can do is set your camera to full manual and just play with one piece at a time. Do some research or talk to somebody that knows photography, and as I was getting into it, I asked somebody, what does ISO mean? What is aperture? And they'd explain it, and I would say, okay, let's pretend like your 5-year-old is listening right now, and let's dumb it down a little bit and help me to understand. And it's amazing though when somebody starts explaining it, and then even if you don't totally understand what they're saying, you can still take that and say, all right, now I'm going to go experiment, and you start understanding.
Yeah. So. Or you can take some of those big words that people say, and you can because we've got this magical thing called Google. You just go in there, type in that one word, and it's like, oh, okay, now I understand this whole 10-minute conversation that was, explaining this part of a camera to me, and now I finally can kind of, it clicks for me. I did that a couple times with video things, and it always helped me quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so why not let's start talking about a little bit of videography type things. So you use same camera for photography and videography.
Yeah.
What kind of projects do you do video wise? What's your favorite type of stuff, and what do you want to maybe even do more of in video?
I think, right now, I do a lot of interview, single person style of video work.
Kind of like talking head types thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, working with one person and the camera, and doing a lot of those projects, helping. And then my big focus is, what I love doing is helping people to tell their story. So helping businesses communicate their story, their vision, their heart for the community, and for the reason that the inspiration for the business took place. And so I think I'm getting towards the point where I can direct more people.
Yeah.
I can't quite write scripts to this point.
That's a tough job.
So that's more difficult. Partly because I just don't know all the dynamics that people want to include.
Yeah.
So you really have to get that heart before you start laying down that script. I would love to learn to shoot music videos and do that well, coordinating that, and telling that story in that 2.5 to 4 minute window of the song. And but I really enjoy the creativity of being able to work in videography and be able to put projects together and help people to communicate their story.
I love that so much about videography because photography is great, and I love photography. It's a lot of fun. I did way too much of it. I forced myself to do it too much, so then I really stopped enjoying it. I took probably a 8-month break from photography where I just didn't take any pictures, and now I'm kind of getting back into it where I'm really starting to enjoy it again. But videography, I don't think I've ever actually burnt myself out on video, just because the aspect where you can, I feel like you can have a lot more of a personal connection because you're talking. It makes you kind of give the illusion of talking with someone. I really enjoy being able to control that aspect of it.
Yeah.
With businesses especially.
Absolutely.
Because when and the thing with doing scripts is I also have had a very hard time doing that. I had to write scripts for Dream Chasers all the time, and those were just so tough because it would go one way and maybe it would be really great, or it would be totally the opposite of what I meant it to be. So what I've found with writing scripts is that if I can sit down and talk with the person that I'm going to be having read the script and just kind of figure out how they talk and just kind of just listen to the flow of their words, I'm usually able to get a pretty good idea to have a pretty, a good starting script. And I'll like send it off to them and be like, hey, this is a script. What do you think? Please, please, please make any changes that you think are necessary. And I've been able to get some pretty good scripts doing that. But also, when you involve the client or whoever in the script writing, sometimes that can just destroy a script. I remember I wrote a script and I was super, super excited about it because I was like, this wording is perfect. I'm so excited to see what this happens. I sent it off to see how they liked it, and they changed like everything about it. It just became clunky. It was a mess. But yeah.
Well, I think helping the client to see and still maintain their voice in it. And I had a client that we just shot a video, and he had somebody help him to revise some of it, and it became less of him because it wasn't his voice anymore. Mm-hmm. It wasn't written anymore in his voice, and so sometimes it is good to go back and forth. Some people are really uncomfortable on camera, and so working with the client to see that and say, well, okay, maybe you're not super comfortable on camera. Let me help you with this. Let me give you the words, or I want you to take your voice, and I want you to be able to write this up, and then I can take your script and I can help add in some elements. And so, it's a project. I mean, learning how to do that, and I don't think it ever gets easier.
No. Because every client's different, and some of them are. I've had clients who write me scripts, and some of those scripts are just like the best video scripts I've seen, and I was just like, wow, and it's just impressive. And I would definitely say writing scripts is a really hard thing, and I'm working on it constantly, and it can be a slow process to get that aspect of video further along. Yeah. But what's your go-to video lens? Is it still your 35, or do you like to use a different lens for video versus photo?
Sometimes that actually depends on who I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a client that tends to be a little bit closer to the camera, and enjoys being closer to the camera. So I'll use my 17 Tamron, my 17 zoom, and we'll use that. The 35 is great. I love being able to drop that aperture and be able to blur the background in those video projects, put the person in focus. But the problem with that ends up being that if you're trying to do a shoot outside, is that the backdrop becomes blinded.
Yes.
Becomes so white, so bright, that it just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't give you the look and the feel that you really want. And I think that's discouraging. And so there's a happy medium. There's some projects, if I'm in a big enough house or a space that I'm working with a client, then I will bring that
Mm-hmm.
35. And really, it has to be dark enough in order to use that.
Yeah.
That low f-stop, further back, has to be dark enough to let that much light in to the camera.
Definitely.
So
I find every once in a while I'll run into an issue where because right now I only have it's a 25 millimeter lens, but it's a 2x crop factor, so it becomes a 50 mil lens, and it's a 1.7, but then it turns into a 3.4. But I'm still able to throw the background pretty good. But I mean, at an effective 3.4, if it's too light and I have to close the aperture down, all of a sudden, like, my image starts falling apart and it just seems flat. And I definitely understand that struggle. And my next my next kind of move is I'm gonna get a Nikon to micro four thirds adapter, because my 35 lens, I love it so much, and I think it would become a 60 mil with the 1.7 crop. It's all this math with lenses that I have it written down somewhere, but not right here right now.
I think it's a Panasonic thing.
Yeah, it's a Panasonic thing, and but the lens, it would make it would change it from an f 1.8 to like an f 1.2 lens.
Okay.
Which would just be sweet, because then I can actually really start throwing a background, and I think that would be a lot of fun to play around with that. And
that's cool.
Yeah. And so now that we're kind of video, I'm just curious about, what computer do you use?
I use currently I've got my MacBook Pro, and I've got a 13-inch MacBook Pro that I use, and it's got 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 solid state hard drive, and that works well. It'll push Final Cut all right. I think I'm really working my way out of that. I've got another couple computers that I'm looking at, and would love to move towards Adobe Premiere and work my way there. But right now, my computer pushes the programs great. I just had a memorial that I filmed, and that was an hour and 45-minute video.
Yeah.
That was a big rendering project. Computer definitely got hot. The biggest problem that I find, and I think that you'll find with any computer, is the render files take up so much room on the hard drive. And so with that memorial project at an hour and 45 minutes, the render files were 117 gigs.
Oh, man.
And so I had to empty them so many times, and so the project would get halfway through, and then it would stop because the render files filled up the hard drive. And so one day I can have 300 gigs free on my hard drive, and I can go through a couple of videos, and then I have 6 gigs of free space on my hard drive.
Yeah.
And it adds up so quick. I think that's the only limiting factor when you don't have something as big as like a 1 terabyte hard drive.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's why I keep all my raw files on my external, and just keep the necessary stuff on the.
Yeah, I've found that because I've worked now with Final Cut, Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, and maybe even a little bit in Sony Vegas. I found that with Final Cut, that program kicks out big rendering files, and I find that Premiere, I don't have that problem as much. I think it's that the render files, I just have less of them. It seems like Final Cut just seems to do them more often.
Again and again.
Yeah, again and again. And so, like when I worked for the city of Mount Vernon, I would fill up the hard drive weekly with rendering files. And then we finally switched to Adobe, and it seemed to get better. But then at the same time, I was starting to push for working off of a hard drive, like doing everything on your hard drive. Because then you're not slowing down your computer, you're just kind of working your hard drive a little bit more. And then the importance shifts from being, it just kind of shifts to now you need a fast external, and you're able to still work pretty well. It's like, I'm pretty comfortably now, I've made the switch from Apple to PC. And the only reason I wanted to do that in the first place was that I bought my iMac in 2014. And, starting out in video, it's a perfect computer. It was awesome. It was able to do HD footage very well. And it was able to do the job, But then a couple years in, all of a sudden I start getting 4K footage. And I'm starting to do projects that are like 80% 4K footage. All of a sudden, my tiny little graphics card is starting to really bog down. It's just being... Like, I did a wedding, and it was about 75-80% 4K footage.
Wow.
And I had it was like an 8-minute just overview of the wedding. It took me like 3 hours to render. It was painful.
Wow.
And then I got a desktop PC, I bought it for like $400 off of a buddy, and I noticed immediately, it was like, wow, 4K footage is just burning. I'm able to burn through it now. And then I started kind of working a little bit more in Premiere, and I started noticing it was like really slow. Every once in a while it would just like freeze, it would hold up, and I was very confused as to what was going on. And then I started kind of looking into what was in my computer. It's like, oh, it's got a really old motherboard. It's got DDR3 RAM, really slow RAM. It's got, I think, 8 gigs of RAM, which is the minimum requirement for Premiere. It's got just all of these things. I was like, okay, so I can go buy a new motherboard so that I can get more RAM. I can get, it started stacking up to where I would have to spend about $800 to upgrade my desktop. And I decided, why not just go get a really crazy laptop, because then I can take it with me wherever I go. So I just bought an Acer Nitro 15. It is the most, just it's ridiculous. I bought it. It was a $700 stock laptop, and it came with, I think, 8 gigs of RAM, like a 128 hard drive, a GTX 1050 Ti graphics card, which is like the biggest graphics card I've ever had. I think it's got 16 gigs of RAM on the graphics end. Not 16, 6. And so, like, it's super solid. And then I was looking for upgrades just because I wanted to see what was out there. And I saw there was a $300 upgrade for a 32 gig RAM chipset. Or it's two 16s. Okay. And so I decided, why not? So I just installed that last week, and it's ridiculous. It's so fast, and it just, it's nice. It's really, really nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to sell my Mac so that I can maybe pour that money into my desktop, get that a little bit up to spec, and it's going to be cool. Yeah.
Well, you touched on something that I think is interesting. What are your thoughts on 4K? Because I know I have thoughts, and you said you have a lot of this footage that you're working with in 4K.
Yeah. Well, for me, 4K footage it's really nice just because, like, right now I'm shooting in 4K on the camera, and I can punch into 200% and then I have 1080 resolution. And that's just really nice if I'm doing a wedding, if I'm doing business things, or even if I'm doing like exteriors. If I just shoot really wide, I can punch in and it's going to still look really good. And then also, if I shoot handheld in 4K, I can take it into Adobe After Effects and I can do the stabilization. And I can just, because you have options in After Effects where you can do crop and stabilize.
Yeah.
Where it will just automatically crop. And usually when it does that, crops way too much. Or not way too much, but it'll just crop a little bit more than you need. So what you can do is you can just have it just do the stabilization, and it'll just kind of rotate your image. And then you can take that into Premiere and just crop it in exactly how much you want. And then you have probably like a 3K video file that is stable and, high resolution. Yeah. And so I definitely enjoy 4K pretty much only for that. In any other situation, I hate 4K because it just eats up space. It eats up space on my computer, on my SD card, and then just rendering time is generally pretty. And it's bigger because you are rendering a lot more pixels.
Yeah.
And so I like it, but
yeah, I haven't found a need to shoot in 4K. The being able to crop your image in, being able to zoom in is really nice.
Yeah.
But the downside to it is the space that it takes up, and the fact that the majority of people don't actually have.
Exactly.
People have 4K TVs, but like you even look at the amount of full-length titles that are available on 4K, and it's still less than 50.
Yeah.
Full-length titles, and I think, for me, that's something that I look at. If Disney is not rushing out to convert everything to 4K, I probably don't need to either.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I've stuck with my A68. Shoots in 1080, gets us there. The downside is the crop factor, and not being able to zoom in on that image and have the clarity of it. But I think for videographers, if you're looking to do something, I mean, I would say don't rush into the 4K. Don't feel like you have to jump into that. Don't feel like you have to do that right now.
Definitely.
Just because there's a TV available doesn't mean that people have the ability to watch the 4K video.
Yeah.
And if you're starting out, I mean, there's a good chance that you probably don't have all the latest and greatest equipment, nor would I recommend it. But your computer probably won't handle it. Don't feel like you have to buy a camera that runs 4K, and just take time with what you have.
Yeah, which, I mean, touching on the cameras that don't have 4K, that is becoming a very short list.
Yeah. Because
a lot of the consumer like camcorders are starting to be able to shoot, 4K at 24 frames per second or something like that. And it's always kind of confused me because these people, most of the consumers don't know exactly what that's going to do.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you buy a camcorder, it's either got an internal storage or it'll come with like a 16 gig card. If you're shooting only 4K, you're going to fill that up really quick.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the internal storage camcorders don't have a lot of internal storage. And then it's just, I like 4K, but I don't think I've made a 4K project file yet, because I always like to downscale my 4K to my 1080, because then you have a 1080 frame with twice as much detail in it, and it just looks really cool, and
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and that's pretty much the only time that I'll use 4K is if I want a really good looking image in a 1080 space, or I want to punch in on my image still in a 1080 space and still be a little bit safe. And I mean, in all honesty, even if you have a 1080 project and you punch in on your 1080 footage, you're able to go into probably about 150% scale before you start noticing like just colors getting a little weird, and maybe even see a couple pixels that just don't look good.
Yeah.
But I think also as you go, actually it's pretty much just cameras now are getting more detailed, that even punching in, it's getting hard to actually tell that it's been modified like that, and I think that's been really cool.
Yeah.
And I think just to finish off the video production end of this, like, what is your recommendation just for people who want to step into video production? What's the things to keep in mind? And, when looking for a camera, what should they focus on? What are your thoughts there?
I would say, depending on where you're at, I think kind of bleeds into photography a little bit, is don't overthrow yourself. Don't start spending more money than you have. Look at what you need and be reasonable with that, and be able to step back a little bit and be realistic about what you want and what you need. Know where your budget is. The reason that I went with the Sony A68 was because it's got 3-axis image stabilization built into it. So there's a lot of projects that you can't, there's either not enough transition time, or there's not enough room on what you're doing to bring a gimbal with you. And so, or it's a matter of travel space, and you just can't bring a gimbal. And so sometimes being able to have a handheld shot that's still stabilized, without having to do a bunch of work in post is fantastic.
Yeah.
Really helpful. But I think even at that, even the A68 is still a $600 body. And so you're like, it's probably it's definitely at the lower end at times of some of the things that you can buy, but it shoots in 1080, and so that's why I like it. It does great for me. I have stayed with the DSLR through a lot of my production because it's so much more portable. It's easier to carry around.
Yes.
You've got one, you can switch to photography if you need to get some still shots in there. If you're doing a live event, that's not what I would recommend doing. I would have 2 different cameras, one that you can run still, one that you can run video. But I think looking along the lines of what do I really need? What is going to be my best investment, the best bang for my buck up front? And don't get too worried about, well, this person has this, and I know I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, well, this YouTuber has this camera, a Canon, so I want a Canon. And yeah, but again, like, people know what cameras are good for them. You got to start somewhere and start learning what different features do, learning why you'd want a mirrored or a mirrorless camera. You got to do some of your own research in that, figuring out what's going to hinder you, what costs are going to hinder you, and don't just buy a camera because a YouTuber has one or because somebody else has one, and say, oh, well, they take great videos with this, or the A68 works great for me. It might not work great for somebody else. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the Sony A series of cameras are impressive cameras. I've worked with a pretty decent amount of them. Like the Sony A6300 is one that I've worked with quite a bit. Yeah. That's a fantastic camera.
And for the price point. Yeah. I mean, it's a good place to start. It gets you off and going. You might consider looking at the availability of lenses too.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a huge thing. The one regret that I have with my 2 A68 bodies is I've got these 2 cameras. I've got, I think, 8 lenses, and they're all Sony A-mount lenses. There's not a lot of adapters for a Sony A-mount from other lenses, and there's not a lot of a Sony A-mount to, like, I guess from other bodies or to other lenses, however that would work. But so I can't adapt that A-mount lens to many things, and I can't adapt many cameras to an A-mount lens. Yeah. And so Canon definitely has the most lenses.
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
Anybody out there, but the Canon camera that may do what you want it to do may cost a little bit more than another camera. Yeah. So anyway, it's a huge game. It's not a one size fits all. Yeah.
And I think that the interesting thing with kind of Sony versus Canon is that a lot of times, at least in my opinion, I think that you can get a better product with a Sony mirrorless or Sony DSLR versus the same price point at a Canon. Yeah. Because like the Canon T6i, I think that's what they're at. They might be at the T7. I don't know. Yeah. But great camera. But you can spend that same exact money on that Canon camera and get a better Sony camera. Sure, you might have a little bit less lenses, but I think you can get a better product. I just don't think that Canon makes that many cameras. I think that they have like pretty sectioned off areas of their cameras where like these bunch of cameras are photography, these very small amount are hybrid, and then here's all the video cameras. And I don't think they cross over as well as Sony does, because Sony, I mean, like their RX series, pretty cheap cameras, pretty affordable, awesome video footage. Their A series, really great photography, pretty awesome videography. And then Canon, it's just, I think that they have a lot more photo-centered cameras than a lot of other companies do. And that also might just be the amount of cameras that Canon has. It might just kind of make it seem that way. Yeah. But
I will say, I don't think that as you're stepping into this, as you're looking at different cameras, I don't think the names of cameras ever make sense.
Oh, definitely.
So confusing. And they don't go... the Sony, the 5D is still a higher camera than the 8D or the ADD, and it's confusing. Yes. And you've got to do a lot of research before you make a decision. It's not, it's again not a one size fits all. I was confident going with Sony because they've been in the video world for so long. Canon has been doing the photography world for so long, and they're killing it. They do a great job.
Yeah.
But it all comes back to what you want to do, to what you want to accomplish. But yeah, I think you can get a T6i. I think I saw a bundle at Costco for $1,200, and I spent $600 on a A68 body, and then $300 on my Tamron 17 to. It's either a 50 or 55. I think I said 55 earlier, but it might be a 17 to 50. But in any case, I got $900 into that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look around, take your time, do some research.
Definitely. Always a good idea. So, now I'm just we're going to do a little kind of switch gears, and we're going to talk a little bit of business things.
All right.
Because I'm curious for myself, because I've been wondering this ever since I got you for this interview. Like, I was thinking about this show. I was thinking, okay, episode 0, my testing for the waters of how this show will do in this ecosystem of the web. I was like, who should I interview? I had like this list of people, and I'm like, okay, I'm running through, and I'm like, oh, Jay, he does video, he does photo, he had a business, or maybe has, I don't know. And so I'm kind of curious, like, Washington Concept, like, you were going pretty hard on that for a while, and it seems like you were just killing it, and like a lot of people knew about Washington Concept. And I just want to know, where's that? Is the project kind of been retired? Is it something you want to maybe proceed with down the road? Like, where are you at with that?
All right. Well, here, I'll give you the story.
Okay.
I'll give you the story. So July of 2013 is when Washington Concept was founded. When we started, and we started as a clothing company. We started having T-shirts printed, and then we bought a screen printer. We started doing that. Started learning that whole world of things, and realized that it was a dream. It was a fun high school dream. Excited about making shirts. If I'm honest, I think it was really an excuse to get free clothing.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the most expensive free clothing that I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
Cost me more money than any other shirt I could have bought.
Oof, yeah.
I could have bought Kanye's T-shirts for however much money he sold them for, and I would have still been ahead.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think... So it started as a clothing company, and doing a little bit of design work here and there, and then we started phasing away from that, realizing that screen printing for people, screen printing for ourselves wasn't really the business that I wanted to be in. So we took a little bit of a break, and then we started we started it up again as a little bit more of a business, with doing some more design work, some graphics here and there for people, and my wife was running it as a wedding and event planning company, and we did that a little bit. Realized that wasn't where we wanted to be either.
Yeah.
Again, it got put on the back burner. We just said we're going to hang on to the business, and then we'll see what happens. And it was interesting, because even as a wedding and event planning company, we got a lot of calls and business just because of the name of it. And so we put it on the back burner, and then this last year we started looking at what are we going to do? What do we want to do? What's our next step in life? And so I had a couple of friends of mine that asked me to do some video work for them, and said, hey, I want you to be on our team. And so my wife and I looked at our skill set. We looked at what we had done in the past. We looked at what we wanted to do. And we said, all right, let's start a marketing company, and it'll be under the name Washington Concept. We've kept that name. We've kept the business license open. Let's go for it, and let's do this. So Washington Concept now is a marketing company, and I focus on videography and photography. My wife focuses on the web and graphic design side of things.
Okay, yeah.
And so we kind of cover a lot of different areas of digital marketing, and helping people to our vision and our mission statement within the company is telling your story to drive your vision.
Okay.
And so really what we want to do is we want to help people to encapsulate what they what they believe, where their vision started, what their brand started as, and tell the story, because that's what brings people in your door.
Definitely.
That's what brings people to you, is that people want to connect. People want to have an emotional connection with you.
Yeah.
And we want to help communicate that.
Okay, I just must say that I feel much better now that I know that, because I've been dying to know any of that for a long time, because it's like every once in a while I'll see something on Instagram or Facebook and I'm like, oh, what are they doing? I just want to know. I want to know. And I don't think it's been like said just like flat out like, we're marketing now. And so I've just been like, it's been kind of, I've noticed that that's kind of like the direction you've been going, but I wasn't sure. So I'm really happy that I have that now. I have that knowledge.
Yeah.
Also, just to put it out there, just to say it, just got back from Whistler the other day. I realized when we left that I wore Washington Concept shirts 3 days in a row. I wore
Wow.
you know that like the classic gray, just black one?
Yeah.
It's the first one that was ever made. I was wearing that. I was like, I have a Gen 1 Washington Concept shirt, and then I like my pink jersey and like my tank top, and I was just like rocking this out here.
Damn.
I just had no idea what the base was actually doing. I thought that was pretty funny. But,
yeah. Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so just kind of, because you have a business in today's world, what is your main focus? Like, what are you doing on social media? How are you using it to grow the business? Maybe even just using your own personal brand? Because I've noticed that you have been doing a really, really great job of growing your own personal brand and kind of letting everybody on social media know that you're the person who knows that knows business, knows a good family work-life balance. And I think that you've been doing a really great job on that. But like, give me a little more insight onto it. How are you using social media to your advantage?
Oh wow. Well, I'm glad that the perception looks like what I'm kind of trying to communicate.
Oh yeah, I don't think you have to try much harder. Like don't slow down by any means, but you're doing a really great job so far, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here, because you're doing all the things that everybody should be doing, and it's so frustrating to see, because I'll be talking with a business or with people who want to kind of get into or want to expand their sphere of influence, and they just disregard social media. It's like, that's where the attention is right now. Why aren't you spending all of your time there?
Yeah.
And so I like it when I see people who I've known for, we've known each other for a pretty long time now. It's
20 years.
Yeah, something like 20 years. And so it's really nice to see when someone wants to make that kind of take that action and actually does it and does it right. I really enjoy seeing that, and it's been nice to notice.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
No, I think our Washington Concept Instagram is that we focus on telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
So all the content on it is pictures that myself or some people that we've worked with on our team have taken.
Yeah.
All photos as we've traveled around, as we've been learning and growing. We've played with those. We've put those up, and we try to tell stories through our images. And I think that telling stories is so impactful. Again, that's what people connect with.
Yeah.
And so we try to do that. I love telling stories, and then through, like, personally trying to share photos that I've taken through our brand, trying to connect the crossover of people that just know me to connect them with our brand.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna be the company for everybody to work with.
Yeah.
And we're totally aware of that, and I want the people that want to work with us, and if we're not a good fit, then that's okay. We're here to benefit each other, and I think the one thing that we're not doing well is one of my favorite things to do, which is telling stories through video.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that our website does not have right
Yeah.
now, which is in the process. But it's so interesting, because even as I talk to businesses, I can tell, and they say, I don't know where to start, and I can tell them, this is where you should start. But I'm not doing that for myself.
Yeah.
And I know I have an idea of where to start, but I haven't started, and I'm 100% certain on where to start.
I absolutely understand that. I constantly have that issue because I can clearly point out to people, like, this is what you need to be doing on social media. You need to be posting daily. You need to be doing, you know, a weekly podcast. You need to be putting out at least a weekly video. And oftentimes I fall short of that because I'm so busy kind of laying the groundwork to be doing that, like this show. Yeah. My goal is to eventually be doing this as a weekly show where, like, I'll go record, like, after this, if this does pretty well, which I imagine it will, I'm just going to record a bunch of them in a week and just have a backlog and then, you know, go search for more people, record a backlog and do that. But right now I'm just I'm doing the grind. I'm trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And I understand that so much. Like, I just got my own website like a month ago. I've been talking about it and I've been telling people to do it for years now. And I finally actually did it. And I was like, I did it. I designed the website and I had it all together. I'm like, why did this take so long? Because I could have done this way earlier and it probably would have been better. Because I've had people like message my Facebook page and be like, hey, where's your website? Which honestly, I don't know what they're looking to find on my website that they wouldn't find on my Facebook page, but
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you like a business today, like, you need a website. That's what you have to have a website. Even if there's not like there should be a call to action on it, but even if there's not a call to action, people need a website. Like, you have to be able to find somebody on a website. I was talking to somebody a year ago who was looking at colleges, and she said, if I look at a college's website and I can't figure it out in the first like minute and a half that I'm on there and it's confusing, I'm not even going to apply for that college.
Yeah.
And that's fair. Like, people need to see a website. A website may not be the front door to your business, but it's definitely a door.
And it's a good way to kind of get an idea of what the business is like. If you have a sloppy website, I mean, and I wouldn't say always it's true, but oftentimes if you have a sloppy website, it kind of shows that you don't care as much about that digital thing. And I want to be buying my products and services from businesses that kind of have it all together and will respect me in the digital realm, other than just like, you know, I buy something from them and that's it. Like, I like when a business, Owl Outfitters out of Seattle, they sell like hammocks and camping things like that. Yeah. I bought a hammock from them, and I like immediately got an email from them just like, hey, thanks for buying a hammock. And it was a personal email. It was really cool. And when businesses do that, it goes well. It's a good idea. Yeah. And I think that is a really good, I mean, it kind of starts with a website, and I think it all kind of boils down to, this is the digital world now. We don't live in, you know, this is the world we live in now. Yeah. And I totally understand people's, you know, how they're not comfortable with it, but it's change. It's the evolution of human, like, behavior. Is just we're kind of moving to a digital space, and I definitely, there's a huge, you know, we still need that personal, you know, communication where it's face to face, and I think that if it's that, a personal communication can really enhance digital communication. I think that's a big thing, and it kind of comes back to video. Is the video production kind of gives that personal digital mix of communication, and I think that's something that businesses really need to be doing more of. And I understand that it's hard because I don't always do it. It's a hard process.
Yeah, I think there's a huge balance. I think you need the website. You definitely need the social media too. And the two big areas that we focus on is Facebook and Instagram. Because both of those are so important. Realistically, your Facebook, you're hitting half the millennials and above. Instagram, you're hitting half the millennials and below. Yeah. And you it depends on your target audience for your business.
Definitely.
But Facebook is important depending on who you're marketing towards, and so making sure that you're spending time there, you're helping them to develop or helping people to understand through Facebook who you are, making it easy for them to contact you through Instagram. Our goal has really been to communicate our story, our vision, some of the art of our work through Instagram. And honestly, I'm at a point right now where I don't necessarily expect to get a lot of business out of Instagram.
Yeah.
But it's something that I still believe in taking an effort
towards. I think that social media, especially Instagram, I think Instagram, Snapchat, you could probably make a pretty good argument for LinkedIn and, I mean, Musically, but that's a very, very specific social media space to try to grow a business on, and it's not the one for me. But it's I think for a lot of businesses, it's all about exposure. It's all about letting people know who you are, and if you can storytell on a social media, you're exposing yourself. You're letting people know who you are, what you're about, and either directly or indirectly, that's how you're going to grow a business. And I think that very slowly businesses are catching on to that. However, I know that that's not going to last long, and businesses are going to catch onto it really, really quick all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And then, Facebook promotion, super, super, super affordable and extremely effective right now. It's not going to be affordable for long because, big businesses are going to catch on, and it's not going to be fun anymore. It's going to be extremely expensive, and you're going to have to find a new place to play. But also, who knows how long that's actually going to take?
Yeah.
Because it should happen right now. It should have happened 2 years ago, but it hasn't yet. And so I'm interested to see when that actually happens, when, like Coca-Cola or, like Nike. I think some of them are starting to do it. Starting to do advertising through Facebook and Instagram, but it's going to explode. And that's the thing, is that, marketers ruin everything that's fun all the time. And there's going to be so many more advertisements, because I can't remember, I was talking to someone the other day, and they're telling me how they were watching a video on one of their favorite social media platforms, and it's one where they had never seen an ad before a video. There was never a pre-roll on a video, and they were scrolling through their feed, and all of a sudden there was an ad for something, and they're like, "This is stupid. Why is this happening?" I was like, "Well, that's what happened. That's where your attention is. That's how businesses make money." Because you might see an ad that you just don't like, or maybe like me, you're scrolling through your Instagram and you see like a really cool hiking pants or whatever, and you're like, "Oh, I need those," and then that's how the attention grows. And I think it's going to happen when it starts to happen. It's going to happen so fast.
Well, and I think the important thing to remember with social media is so that people know you are the marketing, you are the product on social media, and so you are being sold to all these companies, and then these companies are saying, "Oh, they want to know what I'm talking about," and so you talk about hiking, and all of a sudden hiking things start popping up, and or your phone is listening to you. Google and Siri are listening to you, and they're hearing. Just the other day, I was at a coffee shop, and I ran into somebody that I know, and I was talking to them. They said, "What are you doing?" And I told them, and they said, "Do you work from home?" And I said, "Well, I work at coffee shops a lot, and a lot of times this is my office." The next morning, I woke up, I get in my truck, and I look at my Android Auto screen, and it says 19 minutes to work, and it was the address of that coffee shop.
Oh, man.
Which I had never put into my phone. But you are the product. You are the marketing for these social media. You are the product that they're selling to different companies, and so it is so interesting. But at the same time, like, Facebook is so important, and you want your product getting put in front of the other people the people that you're not. Instead of you having a product put in front of you, you want to make sure that your product's getting put in front of them or your services. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, to get a nice little conclusion to the industry podcast, let's go into some goals. So,
all right.
Business goals, personal goals, a little bit of everything. So I let's start with business because, a nice easy transition.
Okay.
Washington Concept, where do you want it to be going? What's your like dream project? What do you want everyone to see and be talking about? What's the goal?
Oh, wow.
I realize that's a hard question, but
oh, wow.
What better place to start making a goal than on an episode 0 podcast?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, we definitely have goals for our business, and there are financial goals, and there are different goals that we have. One of the big goals that we have right now, though, is working towards with people on a retainer. Just trying to help people jump onto that monthly retainer idea so that we can continue providing services for them. They can continue providing services for us. In a lot of cases, there are so many companies that we're working with that need help on an ongoing basis, and then they're frustrated because they've forgotten, I forgot to email you last week. And so trying to help them understand, hey, we can help you. Basically, you're just clicking the autopilot button. We're taking care of you. We know what we're doing every single week. We know what we're doing every single month, and we're making sure that you're scheduled in, and we can place you as a priority in that. And so when other projects come up, when other one-off projects, I can say no to those because I have you penciled in here, and then we can start solidifying some of those plans. So working in that direction, that's been really good. We are, I think, we've got a couple of clients that we're working with on some projects, and just excited to see. I can't talk about the clients that we're working with, but just excited to see some of these projects unfold, and some of maybe watching their businesses grow and expand as a result of some of these exciting stories getting told. As I have just a client who his business really started as a high school, middle school student when he was just trying to make some extra money and starting to grow from there. And now he's in his early 30s, and definitely it's been a few years, but he's making things happen, and things are growing in that direction. Goals for our business. We really just want to help people to tell their story, and help struggling businesses and not just struggling. I don't want to paint it in a negative light, but help businesses to communicate their story and get the people that are maybe those smaller businesses, take the workload of certain things off of them, so they can focus on what they need to, whether it's revamping that website. We do help people with social media management, and so we can actually run the social media for these companies and say, hey, like we'll step in, we'll do this for you, and that way you can hit autopilot. We'll tell the story of your company, and we'll sit down with them and get some information from them, help them run that. And revamping graphics. So really, really helping our customers, and back to the mission of our company, telling your story to drive your vision, helping them to tell that story. So,
Awesome.
In a overarching synopsis of what we're trying to accomplish.
It's definitely hard to simplify it into words. I understand that.
It's
awesome.
Well,
I think that's it. I'm almost certain that my camera stopped recording because I didn't realize that I thought it was only gonna be like half-hour conversation. We've been talking for like almost an hour 10. I was like,
oh wow, all right.
Like, okay, well,
cool.
I learned something right there. No more 4K recording, because that doesn't make sense, especially for a podcast. I think I just forgot about it. Forgot to switch it in.
That's okay.
Learning. It's gonna be good for an episode 0 though. But thank you for being here today. I'm excited to see where you go with Washington Concept and actually just where you go in general. Like, you know, because you've been really smart with social media, so you're not withholding that insight from anyone. So I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to just see where the whole thing goes. It's gonna be cool to see.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Jay and maybe even learned something about cameras and what to keep in mind when starting out in photo and video. Tell me what you want to know more about for future podcast episodes. You can contact me through Instagram or Twitter at Wesley Holboy. That's WesleyHolboy, no spaces, all one word. Or you can contact me through Facebook at Holboy Entertainment, or you can check out my website at holboyentertainment.com and message me through there. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the episode. I'll see you in the next one. Keep making awesome stuff out there.